That time I got reincarnated as a slime or a purple. Based on the Fuse light novel. Nighttime peeks through the window, but sleep must have the gates barred to it. Refused. Manifested temptation struggled against. Concentration's effort directed at this project in daytime's rise must not see its incompleteness. Little girl Zaina sat in the room at home, sketching away on canvas. Next day she in the kitchen with Daddy Zayn eating breakfast. A happy and typical household. Nestled conveniently at a lakeside settlement, Altiz, where her house happens to be, Zaina walks past the school gate with other 10-year-olds and younger this morning. Under the shoulder the squarish drawing in a frame protected in cloth. Science magicians practice a meeting of the two. Stellos, location of the workplace lab in the far corner of Altiz settlement. A large facility, harboring a concentration of scientifically inclined talent. Among its conveniences, outdoor hitching posts for horses. Entry is gained by waving a hand and a hole for a door expands in the wall and individuals casually pass right through. Doable by magic-imbued persons. Named Upflow, a touch of art on its ground shape of a water wall, this liquid flowed in reverse upward anti-gravity spell. People in white lab coats, the science magicians, occupy its confines. Aren't for prestige only a protective clothing from life's little accidents. Magisteel, a material extracted from magic ore, centers on research the scientist's conduct. High-grade equipment is fashioned from magisteel. A scientist explains in idealistic terms the material can act in what called factors. Applications of the magical attuned material. Our progress is a slow stream, I'm confident more we do the water will flow with a river's strength. When things pan out, possibilities top what we've done with it by our imagination thus far. Emit magic waves that heal internal injury and illness, another factor is calming a person's mental state. Overhearing, fellow scientist Zayn, a middle-aged man, however fires off his own speech, not to be confused with intruding. Placing his stack of rolled paper to one side atop equipment. My steel has 1,000,001 ways to fame, fortune, power. The notion of softy purposes is the way magic scientists get shafted. Short end of the stick. We'd do right tossing that idealism. No, my ways earn scientists their rightful due from the world at large. Kings come begging for our knowledge. We don't beg for grants. Say that when it's your loved one in need. Won't matter when we're set for life. He has no intent for medical applications or altruism. Stanicus, whom the first speaker was addressing, dons eye-frames daily, lipstick accentuating gorgeous lips, average height and shapely, a middle-aged lady showing what form a raven-haired beauty that age in the flesh takes. She expresses the possibilities offering their seminal discovery to the world for free. Name recognition has its place, but jazzing obscures the good, the world shouldn't revolve round us. Think of the multitude of lives transformed when we share it freely. Wide-eyed idealism gets you nowhere, retorts he. The world doesn't revolve around us, that future is fast approaching. Would have happened even if the teacher were in class. What is your problem? Asks a startled classmate. The unexpected disturbance turns every student glance their way. Class day next, good girl Zaina grabs what belonging of the child, a paint bottle, who grabs it back. I want the color purple, Zaina bold-faced, argues. The classmate's canvas had violet among its still wet freshly done unfinished picture. That's mine, the classmate yells. Both children have hands tightly on it, struggling for possession. A quarrel about to erupt to a fight by looks of it. Much of the class stood up, some children walk closer. One bumps into the robbed student who lost footing and turned grip on the bottle. Zaina remains with it in her hands. Teacher is bound to arrive, getting the gist, the class couldn't miss their face color red in rage. They want more answers to build a picture. Zaina says wanted their purple paint for herself. And your bright idea is stealing. Teacher also hears of the accident, I couldn't make them fall. Somebody bumped them. All I did was take the purple paint. Kind of the problem, Zaina. There's a brief pause during that teacher's rage found its context. The child hasn't taken any wrong to heart. Then smacking her hand and admonishing the bullying. Would you want someone take what's yours? Teacher brings up the work she defied sleep for, now that I've fixed your attention. The sort of mind you have, the class assignment you brought in. The drawing is so evil I won't grade it. Parents are to blame, I say. Zaina gets one more tongue lashing and the teacher turns about and walks away. The little girl doesn't look bothered. Smashes the leg teacher does into furniture. Zayn's co-workers, some operating on site willing to sleep in, contrast to Zayn who disallows late hours catching him, heading home. One could reasonably forgive him changing his mind to stay overtime and work. A single father raising a daughter, he outright says it's not that. The fresh excuse bringing up the idealistic vision of earlier simply doesn't wish to spend more time than needed on a project celebrating a narrowed end goal of world betterment. Zaina, school bag over the shoulder, walks home. Over time a jogger slips, a flying bird smashes into a building, a tree branch falls to the ground. Unfortunate, supposedly explainable happenings in her vicinity she barely registers. Developing children drum up tantrums. Don't turn your back on me. Zayn angrily tells the child outside the bedroom door she has partially open. He's standing there with a school report on her action in school. He is to sign and she bring back to school. School sucked today, okay. That's no reason to turn your back on me. The girl rudely, PFFT. Careful child. Right now, school isn't like you. Wanting to brush him off, I have art to do. He grabs her slender arm. He isn't going to stand for a moody daughter. The girl is rebellious enough to spit on her own father. Straight up spit on her own father. Time stopped for the man. Some sort of recognition in his deep conscious. His arm extends slowly aiming to slap her face off but stops. Zayn reads a parchment paper in their study. The topic demons and their influence on people. The child behaves with mood swings, being disobedient, challenging father's authority, only to be well behaved and normal the next and following days. Is known to be tough with kids her age. Albeit most times exhibits nothing out the ordinary. One day without a tantrum asks daddy for stuff, purple like her friend's hair. He'd had to make up a story explaining Violet's disappearance when she last dropped by. He denies her request and she well disappointed doesn't blow up this time. More episodes denote unhealthy mental behavior in her room marks lines diagonally to a paper. Just one color pencil used purple. A growing interest in that friend from that time. In between family struggles and work life, Zayn contemplates, no, won't, the cause, burying it in his psyche. The parchment provided uncomfortable answer. In the school play yard Zaina entertains herself by the clap game pat a cake with her girl partner. In vicinity another child playing jump rope trips, a flying bird falls out the sky, skidding on the ground, a kid climbing a slide lost their footing. Following this, classwork is uneventful. Zaina, book bag to her back is walking home. Passing a shed, a roof tile fell away. Turns her head to the sound of it shattering on the ground briefly and continued on her way. Later a resident carrying a load of water buckets on their shoulder, hanging them with a pole walks on the opposite roadside, inexplicably loose balance, the load fearfully crashing down. Before fully rounding a corner, a small ant slide causes a cart-pulling horse to spook. A horse-drawn coach speeding at a leisurely pace, then its spoked wheel falls away, bringing a violent stop. It's been a series of events over time. Mere steps to walk to home when the neighbor's animal, four-legged with a trunk is directed by finger pointing to water plants. The beast stops, turns, staring at its master ominously, and soaks them to utter surprise. Meantime reach the house and a blank wall greets. This opens into a mouth shape and the girl walks in. Wasn't her doing, daddy's creative door spell recognized her, a great surprise to the unaccustomed. Unbelievable he's still in the thick of it words of a stello scientist. Zayn commandeered a lab room for his own desire. Magisteel darts flying under the power of nothing but a man's mind, magically linked to them by a magical headband, something schoolboy you'd call the principal for he speaks calm, the hint of annoyance indicates a slam. Too old to not be cognizant of a weapon and ethics the scientist retorts thinking can right the ship. The out-and-out challenged the accusation unethical, who said weapons a non-starter. You? This lab has no barriers to weapons here and there. About 20 scientist witnesses to him launching darts at a target on the far wall without throwing and organizing them in a mid-air pattern. Going by your intent stare a scent of unethical hangs airborne directed at Stanicus. Personal gain is outside our motives. Goes without saying the maverick hadn't secured permission either. Zayn doesn't look her direction, one would conceive basic respect for the boss called for. Then again what does anyone know? I've come to a point discerning our motley science group has an enemy more insidious than who's outside. The one residing inside. Her eyebrows knitted into another level of annoyance if that possible. He continues manipulating the darts mid-air, minds refusing to accept the cage surrounding them, blinding them from realizing their true power over the world. One's ardent vision has its place sometimes, that attitude can advance science magic. The problem arises when yours collide with that of the majority. Yours the best in one man's world. The flying dart stops inches from Stanicus's gorgeous face. Zayn isn't ready to chafe under the woman or idealistic credentials, looking at her sternly. We scientists have a world duty, which doesn't extend to us being second to anyone. The world will see us as akin to master. Weapons can make our name in clients' eyes and sow a path to our dominance. Exclaiming, the world has enough bloodshed, Zayn. Later at home, soon rises after resting his head down. He learns of what he dubs fate power. He sets her down inquiring if anything out of the ordinary happened lately, explaining curiosity born of one parchment in his possession. The weird stuff. His child describes it from her perspective. In her child vocabulary she sees things happen round her. Stuff that's bad. The scientist asks if she causes any and the child says no, she doesn't understand how they happen. Except when she grabbed the child's paint and the teacher scolded her, something bad happened to them both. He requests a description. He conducts small experimentation and he strikes epiphany. He is a magician and father in the grand scheme of things. Trying to get her to cause harm in the house by willpower yielded no result based on her description, indeed happened seemingly randomly. A wind of destruction would fit, although nothing to say isn't a specific requirement, just him short of the exact cause not out the question. Daddy will solve it baby he promises hugging, patting her back gently. He'd in addition to refusing overtime work, eventually announced he'd show up to work fewer days to people's let's say disappointment. Little could be done to stop him. The Bodius Stanicus pulls rank, pointing the index finger, and tries to order the man work as everyone else. He brushes his boss off. The science magicians have reached the stage already of extracting magisteel out of ore magically. In general labor-intensive measures are the practiced method by contrast. Zayn no cockiness dripping off the lips, counters the only reason the motley group of scientists have magisteel is the magic ore he acquired by business contact. Exploitable leverage team player. Stanicus for her part is taken back to an old perception she'd seen an overambition in that man. Zaina anything but paying attention to the teacher at the blackboard she sketches on paper hid under the desk in purple color pencil. The subject a girl Violet. In coming days sets himself up in a new rented villa, said the bigger size facilitated his work. Pulled his child out school explaining to administration facilitates his child moving to the rental, her belongings are transported there. The girl's absence is to be temporary. At Stello scientists impress upon him places extra travel time to work from the villa, his absence forces his inferior others take up the slack, he'd interpret colleagues as needling his activities belong at the lab, not a villa. Things considered minimizing contact with undesirables seems the plan. Obliging in a reversal and gets things that associated with the primordial for his child. Purple clothes similar to Violet, purple lollipops, ribbons and paints the child's room that color, hires a florist to plant flowers on villa grounds, Violet. He's trying to strengthen the connection betwixt the girl's loving daddy is. May as well do a shrine. Zaina's new bedroom is one, center of it the magical mini statuette of the two conjoined, made during her visit to the world. Zayn reasons his daughter's power could be unimaginable it rejects normal molds. One day out by herself dressed casually in a built-up part of Eltiz. Two horse-drawn carriages head seemingly toward the other, in fact in own lanes, when about to pass each other, clip they do in a loud noise and get stuck. Her chaotic fate power activated without doing a thing. His color specifics and moving done, takes his daughter aside for some education on summons and demons downstairs. This my new schoolwork? She asks. In a manner of speaking. Later to surprise shows up a day, daughter in tow. The day in question his personal off day. Daddy takes his child around, familiarizing her with his workplace. Sure enough mysterious accidents happen on site. In his head daddy is elated, more of that fate power. Encouraging daddy as theorizes to her the fate power manifests in her vicinity, he clarifies what near her can turn to disaster without her actually wanting it, she doesn't have to move a finger. Fate power works that way and invisibly. None could pin anything on him. Zayn to assuage Zaina's fear says embrace it. Back home he entertains possibility of him summoning again. While he doesn't necessarily summon anything himself on the scale of his kid's friend, continues teaching her summoning and demons. Nothing that worries. Came to a head. A grouping of scientist magicians in Estello's office this morning. Only one name on every lip. Zayn has pushed his peers to the limit. Suspecting of somehow by surreptitious magical means of causing accidents that time they couldn't decipher. Happened when his kid came by, casting suspicion on a child. Wasn't any sign of any mystical persuasion in her be it possession or innate magic to be honest. These are professional scientists who wouldn't be so careless around a lab. Then how? Discussion coalesces on his shiny villa. The Stello accidents have any connection to activities there? None says cast an eye upon the villa. Instead part Zayn from the magisteel, hire adventurers to expedite his departure is how. Moreau sets in when Kuloko's death at home casts a shadow. Zayn's business contact. Kuloko linked Zayn to magic ore. There's a suspicion back to the times Zaina visited and things went haywire, unable to explain, discussions return to Kuloko. Unthinkable on the surface, can't be cast aside Zayn had no connection to the man's death. Reports read his eyes found outside the skull. Stanicus speaks up and says drawing unproven conclusions is unscientific and against hiring adventurers to steal. She says moderate their aims, investigate the villa quietly with those hired help. Her track decided upon, albeit unclear where the money is going to come from. Partial payment and magisteel the solution. The thing associated with great value. Later a nighttime rendezvous lakeside to discuss terms with Stanicus. The adventure thought this lady a babe in her age. The adventurers find Zayn and get menacing. His new villa residence a rental situated atop a low elevation hill, accessed by private road, largely isolated at the Eltiz outskirts, the lake visible in the far distance. He picked to be away from co-workers when not working with them, whilst closer to the work site that's further than his original home. The rent, he said to its owner, would find its way to them eventually, leveraging his status as a science magician has perks. Told his daughter fresh air does her lungs good. Adventurers number a little under 12 who approach him indoors. They'd broken in, simply opening the door. Midday, Zayn suddenly confronted by a small mob. One starts the tough talk, you mister. Pack up and skedaddle. Today. What? Scram. Sticking around here is bad for old men. He's middle-aged, a deliberate diss he'd call weak sauce if he thought to say it. You threaten me? Gears spun in his head. Best get out my face. Their buddy menacingly, pass over all your money, man. Odd adventurers want to rob and expedite my departure. You sort are usually hired to clean out monsters. And here bother yourselves with a scientist. The first's face became as a loss. They step into Zayn's personal space, a finger pointed into the man's visage for emphasis. Look, carry your old self out or we do it. You know what to kiss. You best disappear before I rearrange your insides. A man like him, there's only one answer. His little girl playing in a small garden out back when she turns her head towards faint voices. Zaina arrives in her quick walking pace, freezing in her tracks to find hands are bodily on father. Her young mind comprehends enough this is danger. Adorned by a purple floral accessory in the hair, left side of the head and above the knee-length socks that are of course that color. Daddy, what's happening? Somebody shut that kid up, says the first. One of their people, a stranger, puts firm hands on her little shoulders. Wouldn't want something happen to a sweet kid, ole man, they continue. Zaina is nervous. Daddy. She cries out. The one touching her, not the speaker's ankle, twisted by fate power when adjusting their leg's position. Ah. There's a light purple, bathing the place emanating from her body, and next few moments the whole bunch flung outside by nothing more than her aura repelling them. Wanted to protect Daddy as opposed to herself. Genesis, a particular petty act by her parent. The girl exhibited more obvious and intense power manifesting when her parent is into a little girl, mortal danger. The gang were nonplussed. Her aura is a point of notice once they'd landed bodily outside and gathered themselves soon. Strong and malevolent. Thinking a child's power exceeds theirs, it's they who skedaddle. Baby girl, he appealed, his voice strained. They're gone, it's alright. That's the aura's pressure, generating a wind able to ruffle clothes and disturb items in the building. The man barely standing, sprawling his legs to remain upright. The girl seemed in her own world, face knotted in a hideous anger. Wall and structural support nearby crack under the pressure itself. Arms wrap round her little body, baby girl, it's alright. Words reached her then. She gasps and back to her senses, the light reduces to nothing. Zayn lifts her up comfortingly. Aluth, absent at the scene, receives word in the forest tent and noting the little girl sounds very least bizarre, worse too strong to be the hazard class threat level reported to them. Her dad sits on steps connecting to the living room, holding tenderly the hands of his child standing on them. His internal scientist ran through current possibilities conceivable thus far. Some sort of unknown magic type, auras can affect physical surroundings under the right conditions. Then from that time there's that girl, could it be? Zayn would explain more to his daughter about his interpretation of what her actions could mean, no longer a normal person. Says her purple friend must be the one giving power to a regular human like herself some way. It makes Zaina strong. Strong enough to fight for him. Aluth, the one Stanicus met, made their way over bringing a band of low-level adventurers numbering dozens. The day hadn't ended, Zayn and his daughter step outdoors, some feet separate each side. Aluth, back of the mind, reckoned in trouble with his employers, investigate quietly. That little thing must be Zaina. Galuth's the name. No magical emanation from her, nothing abnormal, totally an ordinary kid, they subsume in their head. At worst hazard class threat level is reported to them by the crew. Going to be a merry bash it looked, wanting to finish what their underlings couldn't. Low-ranked underlings who'd returned and joined by way more. Asking their employer about the girl beforehand, heard she just ordinary. Being an otherworlder summon was ruled out according to them because that's his child. So why were their underlings whipped? I'm sure you've heard it before and I'll say it gently, pick up yourselves and leave. I wouldn't be much of a magician if I ran away from trouble, Zayn responds firm. Lurks a confidence in the eye. You know not your situation, good sir. With that, Galuth emitted a threatening, unseen aura from the body as Zaina without the wind. Scare the guy is all. Zayn winces. An aura can harm or kill. I bet you a calamity class adventure. Now you're in the know, run. All the gang had less power than this partial power release. Everyone can feel, not least Zayn, who nudged his daughter forward. Wanting to get at Zayn to scare him, this father, far as Galuth's concerned, is hiding behind this little kid, they'd be spot on. Zayn gambled under right circumstances and she'd blossom. Want to leave under your own power, take your people and you run. Wasn't using her at all. Galuth, perplexed, thinks he can turn the tables. Instead of running for the hills, brings his kid into it. What play here? Aluth is thrown literally by her physical strength to be accurate the aura. Bare moments to spare, reorients their body, twists midair to land on their feet safely, and stops emitting aura. Her own imposing purple aura manifests again a moment before they able to react and leveled off to nothing. Zayn too feels its pressure. It's returned for a bit. The adventurer remembers the girl's power reserves. Am I seeing things? A child, she's on a scale approaching my magicule level. If she's other than an otherworlder summon, what is she? In this world above hazard class, the calamity class, able to take down governments. A danger evaluation system developed by humans must mean one is strong indeed, levels above even that exist. The user gets confirmation a real foe and makes a speech that they can't be condemned fighting a child. They proceed to engage. First vanish, in truth super speed faster than the ordinary eye follows, landing a chop to one of their people. She was intended to be knocked out. What happened? I ended up here. Far from the girl's position. Turns her direction and takes a few steps before accelerating to super speed and ends up beside one of their startled people. This instance has a chance to figure something. Sped towards her and I couldn't stop in time. Hey man, when beginning the second sentence ended in front Zayn courtesy super speed, you did that didn't you? Hiding behind your daughter. The man is stunned temporarily and recovers to reply softly menacing, I don't hold a candle to Zaina, a monster like no other. Stop joking with me. Zaina the distraction while you pull it off old man. That diss once more. Reaching a hand for Zayn that never reached because Zaina sees and suddenly lost his footing, just in time athletically balances themselves. Asks themselves what's going on. Their followers more perplexed if that were possible. Answers dad, fate power. My baby gives messed up ones. Said another way your fate in her vicinity is bad, isn't your lucky day chum. In her body Temrin souls. Temrin? That was you? Never be ashamed to change tactics. Walking towards the daughter decides targeting her would get dad to screw up. Just don't go overboard. Light attacks fail to land. They launch them. They know because they wanted to. Aren't perceiving an aura from this kid and yet. Their fate power dominating to Galuth's confusion. Collapses onto their back, a preceding failed attack. The followers look on in unified shock. Safe to say more than a few jaws dropped. With this Zaina, I don't know who'd call you adventurer. Gal agreed. This goes on, headed back to a client empty-handed. Reputation puts money in the purse just as power can. That only applies far as abiding by agreements, his fight has no business erupting. The fire lit under these undisciplined adventurers devolving into a scrap. Befuddled why their moves aren't getting the job done against a kid, agitated, try harder. They stand, glare at dad and refocus on his dark progeny. Turning on the juice tapping into their magicules raises their fighting potential and here it known have a specific power. Unique skill time savant. Zayn isn't thrown by that would be rather peculiar if one with their magicule energy bereft of one. Zaina felt a sensation. Pain. A tap to the head connects. Zayn's turn to be perplexed. Went great all the time. A human maintaining it can't be anything but impressive, handy in fights, too, the young girl takes on an adult. The power can cause enemies to miss, attack each other in what seem accidents, trip up, and the like that said this point in time, strong opponents say calamity level aren't affected, effective fate immunity, once tapping into more magicule power, overwhelming her. The free pass equals wrong conclusion. Live and learn see the first isn't guaranteed. Didn't stop with a tap. Everyone but the girl sensed Galuth's formidable magicule release. First punches, graduating to kicks land. Zayn didn't feel he needed to rush in and save her. Zaina coughs from the pain, clutching parts of her little frame. Her eyes glance over at daddy a moment. Am I mistaken thinking magicule level can cross out fate power damn? Galuth retorts and queries, mean to say your kid really has cheat moves like that? Things keep like this seems Zayn's associates would have their way. Zaina spat on them. Shocked, you stinkin'. Only next did rage swell, expressed on their face. The lash connects to her arm sending her sprawling and about to fall, and then as if her movement in a strange reverse, rise back up in reach of her enemy who cuffs her in the chest and with this went sprawling and fell down. Zayn didn't rush in. The user can reverse time a few seconds too, for instance add attacks whereby land one then reverse time enough to the moment before that strike lands and then attack again, thereby the attacks in each instance adds up in damage. A multiplier. The little lady bad-mouthing them chucks wood to the fire, really endears them to her. Did in one man's name. Stupid adventurer. Touch my daddy I break you in two. The fight escalates, the adventurer forgetting what brought them a spy mission. Their feet join their hands to land hits, savant in play too. The time reversing of her body looked all too unnatural, this effect clearly witnessed by every eye present. A band member looking on voiced worry things went too far. Her death in the offing. The backhand knocks her downward, inches before her falling body contacts the ground, time reverses, raising her back up where the adult grabs hold of her. The girl racked by pain is held standing by the scruff of her neck by the supposed victor. Brought out my bad side, she's told. Offson defiantly, up yours. Alu through clenched teeth rage they'd had up to here with this brat. In pain her darkness never gleamed darker. Fiendish smile in place declares to her enemies, time to suffer you all. The earlier damage the villa sustained gave out and the front face of the building fell off in a great noise, chunks crushing over a dozen, survivors yelled or too shocked to utter anything. Worked because Galuth's followers targeted, not them. Says the astounded Zayn and blurts, fate powers came back. Galuth no less awed. Mystic technique demon summoning. Zaina inkens through the pain a gentle purple glow permeated the air, on the ground developed symbology near instantly. My offering, these bodies. The deceased bodies wither away, ritual and sacrifice. Inches above the ground forms two clouds of purple a darker hue, seconds later take a demon pair's forms. While processing things, the glow vanished. Galuth surmises are greater demons by feeling the magicule content. Their thoughts interrupted, glanced down to a young lass tugging gently on the fighter's clothing, a third. The little girl passing for 10. Caucasian skin, very cute, pulchritude a quantity to behold, precious golden eyes, adorned in short girl's boots, an alluring dress that exposed the arms. Her neck decorated by a filigree choker, metalwork of many small human skulls side by side. Purple the fingernails, complementing the middle-length hair this vibrant color, tied in a side ponytail. Most adorable child in the world. Mr. Grown-ups have to be so meany. Surprised with room for fierceness, looking down at her short stature, a demon such as you appeared. Taken by her young features. I'll settle with you. Fiercely, see you in hell. Wait for me. Galuth terrified and shocked to notice pulling on them from below, many demonic hands attached to arms. They let go of Zayn's child and the newcomer props her up with a hand on the back. Struggling to run to no avail. Time saved. A desperate call of power doesn't work, continuing to sink, dragged by hands down into the very ground. Up the waist, chest, finally the head, despair written in its visage and every trace vanishes. First act upon her summoning, saving Zaina. Earl carries it up to 11, decimating a score of remaining enemies unlucky enough to be in vicinity. Verbally incanting aloud, outstretching the arm, electric bomb. Inches above her little open manus forms white spherical electricity about a foot across, then flies off and halts some feet above adventures the ball expels vicious heat and lightning like bolts below to a radius much greater than the sphere, permeated by screams of the afflicted dying. In paltry seconds ends, charred, smoking forms in its wake. Ought to love throwbacks. Turned the magic on its user and Temrin. Nothing like a second performance. Electric bomb. A sphere flies, covering the intervening distance and stops midair above more luckless. Zayn appeared in danger from the electrical outburst. Once more the screams of agony, at the end torrified smoking bodies. Dad unharmed owing that one of the girl's accompanying demons shielded him bodily. Smell of the blackened assail noses, Zaina covers hers. The little girl bends the wrist, out one body emerges a sphere. This one half a foot across, within is a gaseous blue color dances around the sphere's very center of shining light. What this world calls, what Zayn got a close view of last time a soul. The bright object promptly floats over to her, hovering. She turns and looks up at the taller Zayn, who trotted over. Playfully asks if she can share something with Zaina. His tongue stuck in his throat a while but marshals mentally to ask, what is it? The girl beams fiendishly and snaps the fingers, at once many more orbs rise promptly from a few dozen remaining bodies and into the sky 200 feet thereabouts, surrounding them. Were one to ignore what next, genuinely attractive. Next instant each fly into his child's body all in short moments, whose ire eyes turn purple and collapses from drowsiness. Zayn is appalled, what are you doing? Last he saw Violet she pulled that show. She and I are friends Zayn came the affable child voice. Zayn felt a chill inside the latest around her. Bound to happen, what he set in motion, the real cause of his daughter's actions reappeared a demon's cursor simply a man's pettiness. Everything stopped, time froze. His mind hadn't even considered processing the last moments. When it looked like his child may perish, the tables turned, dozens became dead witnesses to the living. Her eyes back to normal, his daughter hadn't lost consciousness and picks herself up herself you're the best dad. The effect of soul transfer had run its course shortly. Zayn's next question wasn't his daughter's well-being. Soul transfer is empowering my girl, isn't it? He told his child this demon strengthened her some way. What and how it manifests as a budding flower. Wait and see. They're converted to energy, explains the calamity level strength. Carries Temrin souls in her the numerous from a town thanks to daddy. His profession science, therefore analytical tendencies are intrinsic to him. The smell of death backseat in his mind, my child attained magical properties. Transferences don't necessarily grant that ability. Far be it from me to conceive fate power hadn't altered Zaina's being, reality itself in order for my daughter to accept souls and be a magical girl. Haven't you yourself summoned me by your own hand that time? Notes the girl. Sure did, and resultant bloody results. The know-how didn't carry over from daddy. Zaina's bereft of that boss level experience. I recently educating her in some principles doesn't make up the difference. No, fate flows around her, warped. Flows purposely for everyone else. A magically attuned being as in a monster or spirit isn't guaranteed to perform an equal feat, saying nothing of most humans. It's learned who Violet is a high demon. A primordial. Zaina hears it from Violet's mouth. The girl says Violet watched over her. The purple in kind says not the case. Violet didn't have to watch over Zaina, she believed in the human too much for that said, listening for her summoning. Violet is a bullion to play some more. The Hell and Light show on arrival a warm-up. What service would you have me render? Zayn answered in place of his child's perplexed face. To take care of some work issue. He thinks the fancy sentence she spoke wouldn't be understood by near any child Zaina's age. Knew that, didn't you, little demon? Wanted to stir me in the pot. Ad further explains matters regarding the dispute in fate power, first admitting the real purpose for the house move and out of the way privacy to teach magical arts to his child without prying eyes. Next, laced in gratitude, feels the demon is granted. He is certain how those adventurers came, old friend sent them. His child's tilts up at the name of his scientist rival Stanicus. Violet praises Zaina, for primordial isn't alien, the girl responds daddy taught her, just that didn't know her friend won. She knows how to summon strong demons. Violet says strong power is most times needed and that's where Zaina rises above anyone her age. She and daddy go way back. Only played her to utterly slaughter a floating town on false pretenses. As for the compensation, Violet merely states, to play with Zaina. And that seals the contract with you, huh? Dad probes. She nods. Zayn makes an observation of the two other demons and confirms what he read in the parchment in his study, her purple lineage obviously, judging by the hair color. Violet cutesy-like says she was playing with them when Zaina summoned, putting pain on them. Back, it's back. His throat lump he'd felt the last time summoned the brutalizer in child form. Last time the demon called what she imparted to Zaina, his little girl, a curse. Both fate and magicule, it felt with a chance to mull events, to him Violet's curse a demon's blessing. The girls chatting, Zaina shows her friend the statuette of each other conjoined made last time she visited. Therefore, are in the bedroom shrine. Violet, taken by emotion, magically manifests small purple mist over each open hand that morph into statuettes of each other, floating gently to her hands. Reverence in her being, walks to the shrine and places the two to rest beside the original. No mere trinkets, these the demon had taken back to the demon realm from her last visitation. Violet returns and touches her hand to Zaina's, something good she promises. Zaina hands her a lollipop. The small party arrived. Zayn wanted to reconnect with his colleagues and their hired muscle. On arrival by day, nothing but a haze greets. Nothing to be seen of the place. They discuss the oddity. We're in Stellos. Where's my lab? Zayn, perplexed, thinks aloud. That's your workplace then? Violet inquired. Yes, it is. I sense brain waves that way, she says, indicating direction by nudging her chin toward a distant empty spot. Carries deep anticipation. The scientist laughs and says, that's their game. Hid my lab by camouflage. Like he ever owned the place. Cut short when a lot of hired muscle emerge from the spot. As though emerging out thin air. Zayn surmises correctly, ensconced themselves in the invisible building. Listen to me, darling, says Zayn. He cautions to his daughter a belief someone with high enough magicules and a skill could overcome fate power. Beautiful father hangs back a safe distance and lets the daughter demon team handle affairs. His child risking her life. The two demons leap backwards many feet. Quieter, she relates to Zaina if it felt an energy emitted from their enemies. She can't, and the demon tells her block out all else and focus her mind. Zaina's face contorts in concentration, shutting the eyes. In short order, eyes open again, can feel it. Many little ones and a bigger one, but that concerns enemies. She turns her head toward her partner, one dwarfs them all. What you feel is the magicule level of those around here. Wow. I presumed your high power level would grant you a skill. That's your limit for now. As you progress, the world will open up even more to you. Magic sense. Impressive. That extra skill would fry a typical human circuits. Then again, this child dispensed with typical. There's way more to that skill than power level. The purple-haired unwraps and sucks her lollipop. What a terrible thing, as Temrin's fate grimly preaches. The air churns of tension of both sides, excluding a calm demoness, twirling the ponytail. When it breaks. The enemies are some distance away, rapidly shortening by their running charge. The duo outnumbered many times, again dozens of opposition, in the range approximating 100. Violet smiles sweetly. Zaina can feel something visualizing in the mind. They're on the periphery if only can reach it. Her eyes has returned to purple. Water burst. Some low-level enemies are engulfed in a large water mass sufficiently expansive where they float entirely within, flaying their limbs haplessly, gasping for air. Inside the liquid are fleeting flashes, mini explosions, in turn creating small, momentary expanding bubbles that immediately contract, and the shockwave racing through the liquid medium smashes their bodies apart as an underwater explosion would. Zayn, impressed at, is appalled, ink-forming water from nowhere. Her power reached inconceivable levels for her age. Talent for carnage you gave her is immeasurable, little primordial. Violet's cheerful praising, there you go. Where did that come from, Violet, asks she. From you, Zaina. Manifesting the magic in this world required something you can see and speaking it into existence. Touching hands was I putting the idea in your head. You have the magicules, all it took was thinking it. Adds, the mini blasts in the water were tiny nuclear strike magic. The battle is still demanding their attention. Electric bomb's area of effect electric storm decimates some rank and file opposition, threat levels nowhere on par with calamity. Well done, a demoness's food pun less funny or one to consider, blackened and torrified bodies about the place. The smell of singed flesh drifts over. Next target, someone else. The ball approaches, nevertheless doesn't make the most of the gap and evade. Electricity doesn't work on the strongest foe at several tens of feet distant who assumes no problem, verbally placing himself on another scale. This time Violet cast minus, chanting its name, a point missed by this arrogant one. Zaina and all alarmed, the guy tanked a full blast to her surprise. You're in the presence of Spritzna. I can tell from the word you're Zayn's kid. But you, shifting gaze to the next child, nobody said he fathered 2 girls. Who are you? Getting monster magicule level vibes like nothing else. Violet smiles and remarks, you'll play nicely. Girly. Zaina, told your father despair is reserved for his offenders, join me dispensing it. The scientist within the invisible lab building wonders what the calamity class is doing. They're not joining the battle. That person is observing only. What are we paying you for, shake your ass. Little girls versus a multitude. Addie's daughter enacts water burst on some more enemies and the liquid and shattered bodies falls down to the ground. The little demon snaps her fingers. The air temperature round some enemies a distance away elevates, body language indicated discomfiture soon. Kept on elevating and swiftly. Finally flaying around madly or attempting to flee under an invisible force. The screams ended by air 550 degrees Fahrenheit. Broiled alive. A heat haze rises from the location as the magic ends. As before, no chant. The memory is swelling in her head, Zaina can't shake the sense it's not new to her. Dying to ask and did. Can I think it like water burst? I imprinted different spells on your mind. When you're up to it, will to life. Oh gosh, what to call it? Seeing that cooking class, a winged fighter flies up and away to flee. The lowly gestures a come here motion with the index finger. Fly as they might, gradually are losing altitude, panic across every square inch, struggle do they, making frantic flapping movements, their visage strained, pulled down by an invisible force they can't feel nor see. Lower and lower they come, closer and closer straight to a demoness's clutches, landing gently barely a foot away. Cold sweat engulfs them. The girl did little as shrug her shoulders. And the combatant flies away in sheer terror. No word said. The calamity class opponent Spritzna notes how unclean and menacing the invisible auras of these little girls before them. Similar, but the purple-haired one is spilling out more. Good of them they think because a drain ability reducing their magicule energy. Spritzna's turn to be childish. Sarcastically him, what have I gotten myself into? Look really strong. Kids look decent enough to play with, but eyes the ponytailed youngster more carefully, haven't I read of a big shot with hair that shade? Sighs and moves on, how to get the juices flowing. I know. Extra skill Harman. Their body in seconds obscured by an unnatural haze. Then immediately that of the surroundings, the girls can see only a short distance ahead, clear outlines and shapes obscured. Violet hit at extra level because the magicule-infused particles in the air obscure eyesight. This has magic jamming properties, magic sense isn't helping. Right then a vaguely discernible shadowy shape appears nearby, a smack and sent flying. She landed bodily like a sack of potatoes and has to pick herself up. Violet calls Zaina. Then louder, Violet. I'm here. Snuck up on me through the haze. Proceeding to rush over is to hit when a shadowy shape manifests close up. Ow. She looks and it's gone. In her mind cleverness there to make out the bugger attacking under the haze. Spritzna's first attack parted the girl some distance. Can't fault that strategy. Violet, where are you? Can't see you. The voice reaches, I'm coming. This shadowy form shows up nearby and a hit sends her stumbling back. Regaining her balance, Violet reasoned the shadow was them when they're close. Magic sense countered means can't notice their approach till right on top of them. This one separating us. Violet calls out, want you turn on your fate power and point them out for me to hit. Can't reach you. Zaina racked in fear and worry, can't I mean magic sense is on, but can't pick them up. Rely on yourself Zaina. Encouraged, the girl nods and her face twists in concentration. Tense moments mount, Zayn watches intently from his distant position. App in the haze. Taking her chance, Violet's app's manifesting as electricity streaming out her index finger, catching Spritzno off in the distance, both closing in on Zaina and outside the range the shadow would have appeared. Their enemy stops in their tracks, groaning painfully. What the? That wasn't supposed to happen. Magic sense is blind to my skill. There's a voice beside them. Spritzno looks down to see Violet looking up at him closed in with super speed unnoticed. She's special. Doesn't have rely on MS, fate decreed the gap and not a skill as you know it. Went to work shocking them some more seconds and a powerful kick from her diminutive frame sent the adventurer flying away into their own haze and emanating from there a thud noise to land roughly on the ground. The haze dissipates in short order for their immediate surroundings, however remains on the area beyond, obscuring the sight. Spritzna is picking themselves up, completely visible now. Got a doubt to call human that's for sure. Zaina, you farted out that skill she is savage flip of a dime. Incensed, their body quakes, haven't seen skill yet brat. Unique skill replication. But that a copy, too, split off the main body. The original body asserts, beg for mercy. Don't got a lot to go around. What's going on? Wonders a bemused Zaina. Violet is beside her, our magicule bank is draining. I think we're going to have to rely on your powers sooner than later. Magicule is a form of energy this world has. The original body drains magicule from targets by being in mere proximity to create those strong copies, in the process weakening the target. The two rush the girls, but with now slightly reduced hyperspeed and still enough for Violet to be perceived as a blur, rushes forward to punch both replicants rocking them into a stammer and returning to her partner's side in barely an eye blink. That loquacious main body, impressive a specimen as I am, hang on to your skirts. Each of the two copies invokes an attack, common skill Raphael. Blows a strong gust out the mouth. Common skill Ash Flame breathes fire. Examples of elemental magic. Violet grabs Zaina to make a superhuman leap around 20 feet. The girls find them the toughest nut here. The replicant turns and directs Ash Flame their way, the summon snaps the fingers, the red flame is approaching rapidly, its heat measuring 980 degrees Fahrenheit, the girls feel the temperature rising as it gets closer and about to make contact when the fire stream bends skyward and promptly dissipates. Zaina, I distract, you rely on fate power. I'll try. My faith rests in you, have it in yourself. And with that speeds off, her movement super fast, limbs clearly seen moving, albeit this means slower. Zayn and the two demons continue the vigil. The daughter left with trying to figure out the how. The main body boasts loudly, mere clones. In your dreams. With this I got double magic same time. Violet zips around approaching and pulling away from the duo. Taking a window for offense, tilts her wrist and redirects Ash Flame reaching for her toward the next copy, bending the flame stream, the fire user shut off the magic before it reaches. I'm that good boasts the main body. So it goes for a while. The fire is headed for Zaina, standing in the open as she was. Zayn clenched a fist. Violet waves a wrist, near instant later a corpse came to a stop in front Zaina, hanging midair. Being a shield tanks the blast and while being burned flies toward the copy speedily, before the fiery remains can slam into them, Raphael's wind blew it off course to hurtle into the ground harmlessly. Spritzna by a sub-skill, the magicule absorption increased theirs by way of replication. Think you're on our level. Boasts the main body, then all three, check this out, extra skill camps in the wind and fire from both intersect creating a speedy fiery wind. The flame converts to orange, hotter yet reaching 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. The common skill becomes the higher magnitude extra skill. Extra dwarfs power and efficiency of common. More precisely the tensor world measures power by skills, in order of evolution. Common, extra, unique and ultimate, each building upon the one before. Entered Zaina's head fleetingly fire hates water burst when the idea evaporated. Violet flicks her wrist, her magic attempt failed redirecting, narrowly she dodges out the way. The attack adjusts to blow in her direction again, snap of her fingers flew in 3 fresh bodies, one behind each other to shield herself. The fire contacts the men bound to consume all 3 gradually. Majority of the conflagration touches the frontmost body, which is burned through and applies its full fury on the second immediately behind. The windy blaze narrows down in diameter to nothing in a span of seconds. The arrogance wiped away on Spritzna's face. Why my heat magic? The replicant calls out, common skill Raphael. Nothing. The original, magic doesn't simply misfire. I got the magicule. Zaina's head tracks the floating copies that head over to their creator and out of some horror show, proceed merging with them. Her expression shocked at the sight. Spritzna, grand despair harries the face. Wonderful were you, Violet congrats them sweetly, playfully hugging herself and twisting her little body side to side. Cockiness is finally left at the door, could you possibly be a primordial? That hair caught his eye. Violet. She places her manus near her face, opening and closing it, lies now and then brain in this world. Primordial demons' reputations are the terror of this realm. The adventurer shocked by what they tangled with. Hadn't a thought their presence could mean Galuth's defeat. Summoning you is supposed to be once in a lifetime. The body merge continues. Not my hand doing this to you. Zaina's fate power is majesty unfolding, developing, evolving, assuredly resolved to rise to its own reputed name of despair. Feel venerated in your contribution, adventurer. Before anyone realizes has morphed from Zayn's pettiness to scaring him and outright death. Or did the demon know? Brained my magicules. Violets are shooting up, her purple aura visible, capped with a sweet smile. Purposely allowed my magicules be tapped by your skill, even permitted your haze to work in service to one thing, a young girl's potentiality. The three bodies more conjoined this point and is told unfortunately for them Violet a magnitude order demon able to generate magicule-like breathing air, replacing what energy lost. A puissant. Zayn smiles. Obscuring the lab, Harmattan dissipates revealing it. Galuth snippet. A few young demons floated past, them hiding behind a large rock, had turned their direction anxiously. Wheezing, sweating. In the demon realm most demons are without any sense of self. When summoned several times this changes, the material world permits developing an ego. Stanika's surprise intermixed with frustration, could be none other than him. How could be so strong? She observing events through a window. To magicians in vicinity, as one. Create a magicule barrier. Dawned on her a life versus death struggle for every scientist. Violet's body language indicates she perceived it. Something peculiar makes way past the upflow art piece. Up rose the green-colored barrier from the ground. Dome shape encompasses the lab building and some grounds beyond. Violet walks over to the other girl and pats her head. Her face turns so unseen, is smiling fiendishly and snaps her fingers. From each corpse rises a globe souls. That speed into her body, collapsing her. The girl's magicule bank will boost and replenish. Daddy took it in utmost joy, air, trepidation. Zaina wants to keep going. Violet is against, I detect brain waves in the lab. No doubt you've guessed our daddy's co-workers. Before they bow out let Zayn's enemies drink from the cistern of despair. The lab code employee is curious to heavy footsteps. Who goes there? The soul-splitting scream permeates the building. Individuals raise or turn heads. Isn't that the replication user? Exclaims a scientist. Much fear and shock to realization now Hulk triple their body's original size, abominable mass of three bodies. A creature headless, Spritzna's face embedded in the large chest. The demon sent Zayn's opposition a sign of impending despair. Physically built to hail, arrived and rampaged, smashing stuff, attacking people, grabbing one and tossing them aside, next breathing fire and wind wildly out a number of smaller mouths across the body that formed after, even the back. A nightmare that eats nightmares. People run or scream in terror. The roar could shatter minds. The being that went past the sculpture must have entered within the barrier's boundary before it went up. One backhand sends a scientist flying. Amid all seethed Stanika's, watching down at the unfolding carnage from a distance, she positioned atop a mid-air walkway. Ability to fight back feasible had not the adventurers been destroyed. What happened at the villa? Their job was sneaking around. Unleashed a burst power looking poised to swallow them all. This befell Temrin. The last defensive barrier blocked the girls. Violet childlike disposition yet again, points a finger. The demon duo leaves the man's side and rush past the girls, surprise on Zayn's face. Upon reaching, first physically touch the magical barrier and bodies are assimilated by the barrier, disturbance in its makeup ensue indicated by visual effect and Violet finally finger snaps, shattering it, more shocked as Zayn's colleagues. Sacrifice them like nothing observes Daddy. When the hail wasn't charging or smashing, alternately unleashed the elemental scourge out the mouths. The girls and walk past its former boundary. Bows to a demonic will does the wall, forming the same hole it does for employees, which the girls walk through. Elsewhere the beast charges through a wall inside. Back then the parchment confirmed what he in his soul's depths could predict his child's behavior influenced by a demon. Violet in Temrin's aftershock explicitly told him a curse placed on his child, triggered by his pettiness. Could his actions now be interpreted he wanted his daughter to gain power? He to gain power by such agency? Monstrous rampage had soon succumbed to death's embrace on its own. Scattered fires and wind damage litter the facility, building debris and equipment strewn about. Violet, seeing Spritzner's corpse, remarks they were pretty skilled. Childlike tone, then again underneath mocking. Not clear enough. Brought a number of skills to the deadly contest which proved null, facing abominable might. That's the guy who fought us? Asks Zaina, deep down knowing the answer. A signal to the world. Moving on, the two girls would execute a methodical massacre of Zayn's rivals, badly shaken from last events. Violet licks her lollipop. Zaina's eyes is ominous purple. Time to time, one victim at a time, targets are transplanted within a mirror that immediately develops cracks and shatters to pieces, killing them. Witnesses lose breath from shock. Zaina, copying her demon influence, requires Incant, she dubs Shatter, the puissant primordial doesn't. The duo walks in their kill zone. Without looking at an unfortunate, Violet tilts her chin up, their soul floats away out their body, the person panics, reaching out for it with what little time their life force granted, expiring in moments. Curious as curious does, Zaina inquires if that in her mind. I said something about you and enough magicules, but not everything you can do, Violet responds. This isn't one. Some are higher level magics open to you when there's enough, pointing her index finger Zaina's way, the soul zips through the air into her body. I got a name for when I get that soul rip. Then and there the child breaks off, entranced. A female adult speaker in her head. Emotionlessly, notice. Acquired have you organization of all skills under the unique skill chaos order. Zaina asks her partner in murder if herded. Violet inquires more information. The human relates a voice in her head she'd heard never gave the skill. Somehow I can tell it's voice of the world. Try as she might, can't hear it anymore. The demon's know-how lets her explain voice of the world. A voice heard when an event in the world takes place, and one trigger is what happened just now, skill acquisition. The voice will never chat you up. Said to be an overseer of everything and itself, handiwork of God. My faith in you is justified, Zaina. Destiny has called you to its side. Speechless a good while. When wherewithal of tongue returns, Zaina says feels different, like nothing is outside her reach. Violet cautions scary things are out there she should watch for, existences can defeat and kill her. Always remember the ironclad rule. Survival of the fittest. There remain those to be victims. Shatter, the main kill method interspersed with other artful techniques. Violet runs a hand through her hair, flesh of a victim's face floats away off the skull. Children are the earliest stage of human copycat behavior. Face off. To her own victim. A contest to determine if this the most horrific power an amoral being bestowed her thus far. Being less proficient must call out her magic. Nevertheless, the girl's a talent nurtured by a demon incarnate. People snivel or beg. The eerie auras from two little girls seep through their skins and into deepest reaches. Violet placed a hand on her neck, a scientist nearby has a shadow of her little hand form on their throat. From their experience, a choking sensation. Try to pull off whatever's doing that, you can't do a shadow. Struggling to breath, clawed the shadow. Their voice choking sounds. Death silence. Gleam in her eye, Zaina thinks she can do that too. Her pal responds cheerfully, chokes Mimi's. Zaina then eyes someone who immediately grovels. Bodies litter the place, dozens. Their souls in repeat transferred to his child-loving dad, unlikely to find fault. The main rival to her father, Stanicus, is found, the blockage of his vision walks with either girl on each arm, make no mistake, they're not bewitched by magic or any obvious sign of force, but the doom is palpable. They came along resigned, victory forsook them. Pettiness Zayn climbed, this second deal with a demon the summit. Tellingly hadn't rebuked one man's turpitude. Trail of death. Demon bargaining, spiting his neighbor, sowing tragedy to a town, comrades dead, his flesh and blood a killer under a demon's sway, the innocents torn asunder. The trio reach Zayn standing beside the sculpture and stop. Daddy can learn of his little girl's skill in a timing. Zaina remembered their name Daddy didn't like. Stanicus' dad. You said was trouble. He Violet opens up to him, the material world is compensation to the highest worm. Zayn knew the meaning right away. His daughter. A worm's pettiness unlocked the curse of valsing her innocence. Her closed lips curve into a smile. This hell's melange has to end somewhere. Face blanched, Stanicus speaks what possessed the man, conjure an existence as evil as a primordial. The demon herself identified as such to them earlier, and she expounds the harm to science his actions result in. The blind fast to pass judgment. Look where righteous idealism put you. Buloko, Temrin, all you. Why those scum ended up at my house. Were only to discover if you did any work there. Nearly killed my daughter. I never made the call. Zayn. He has a choice. Violet implies calmly, should Zayn kill this person himself behind bringing the woman before him. Knife in hand, Zaina present, pettiness every bit the weapon when the blade plunges in. Author's note. Procrastination, writer's block kept this going April to November. Don't want to talk more of it. Takes me back to a novella I wrote and this double the original's length, but still. It hasn't met a sentient blob and unnamed. Anyone curious why a demon acts a kid, her descendants are the whimsical stance, other words behavior. Yeah, top father award goes to the evil one here, the notion morality prevails all the time breaks as the mirror had. Prepped to write an unrelated novella when I chose to pen a quick story worm, still hadn't gotten around to the novella when I saw it spiking online very fast. Novellas take months, decided screw it, immediately ready this. Hardly any of my stories attracted this level of attention, people by the bunches love the show as I. When I write fanfic have always kept the spirit of the material alive without veering of course, crossovers and the like. The characters true to what you've seen or read. Their acceptance of that time I got reincarnated as a slime pettiness born of a worm prompted me to give Tensura another round as a sequel, and thank you. The series also goes by Tensei Shitara Suremu Data Ken, also known as Tensura or Slime Isekai. More Tigris to come Velgrand. Date Thursday, 3 November 2022.